Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Apologies for yesterday, but I was off my desk all day. I participated in an Al Jazeera inside story about South Africa, about the finance minister's sacking. If you care to have a look, do have a look at that. And then over the weekend, I say go limit short South Africa. And in part, that's informed by the fact that I think President Zuma is strong enough to see what is his worst challenge, biggest challenge since he assumed power. He's got enough at his disposal to see that challenge off. And in part, I think that keeps South Africa's ratings, the currency, very weak. I did an interview with a gentleman called Mr. Tapan Biswaroop Barua, Global Head of Credit Products of Standard Chartered, based in Singapore. Home thoughts, I'm looking forward tremendously to catching up with my daughters Aisha and Layla in London next week. I found this photograph of Layla on the top of Mount Kenya. She went on a school trip. I like this, hammocks that extend off the edge of the decks at the St. Regis in the Maldives. This story caught my attention. Unexplained radio signals are definitely coming from space. Fast radio burst, or FRBs, were first found 10 years ago. They last for only a fraction of a second, but seem to be coming from vast distances away and are 1 billion times brighter than anything we've seen in our Milky Way. And that took me back to Don DeLillo. Somehow we are picking up signals from radio programs up to 40, 50, 60 years ago. There's a voice. We have gross oscillation here. There's some interference. I've gone redundant, but I'm not sure it's helping. We're clearing an outframe to locate source. Thank you, Colorado. It is probably just selective noise. You are negative red on the step function quad. It was a voice, I told them. We have just received an affirm on selective noise. We will correct Tomahawk. In the meantime, advise you to stay redundant. The voice, in contrast to Colorado's metallic pigeon, is a melange of repartee, laughter, and song, with a quality of purest, sweetest sadness. Somehow we were picking up signals from radio programs of 40, 50, 60 years ago. And that took me back to another quotation of DeLillo's that I like. There are dead stars that still shine because their light is trapped in time. Where do I stand in this light which does not strictly exist? White House logs indicate Susan Rice consumed unmasked intel on Trump associates. Indicate his National Security Advisor Susan Rice accessed numerous intelligence reports during Obama's last 7 months in office that contained National Security Agency intercepts involving Donald Trump and his associates. And I thought to myself, well, that's correct, isn't it? That's the job of the National Security Advisor, to understand all components around intelligence. So I don't think it's something that I would be overly concerned about if I was Susan Rice. And that goes back to my article, We Have a Deviate Tomahawk. Blackwater founder held secret Seychelles meeting to establish Trump-Putin back channel. The UAE arranged a secret meeting in January between Blackwater founder Eric Prince and a Russian close to President Putin as part of an apparent effort to establish a back channel line of communication between Moscow and President-elect Donald Trump, according to the US, European, and Arab officials. The meeting took place around January 11, 9 days before Trump's inauguration, in the Seychelles Islands in the Indian Ocean, officials said. Though the full agenda remains unclear, the UAE agreed to broker the meeting in part to explore whether Russia could be persuaded to curtail its relationship with Iran, including in Syria, a Trump administration objective that would be likely to require major concessions to Moscow on US sanctions. We visited the Seychelles. This is a photograph of the beach, that's Hannah, and actually I noticed a villa perched right at the top of a mountain, and I asked the driver, and he said, look, that belongs to the Prince of the UAE, and the only way to get there is by helicopter. Without the tweets, I wouldn't be here. I have over 100 million followers between Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, Mr. Trump. Britain offers to help wean Saudi economy off oil dependency. North Korea fired a ballistic missile into the East Sea ahead of the meeting between Trump and Xi Jinping. Russia says yesterday's chemical attack in Syria was a result of the Syrian Air Force bombing a rebel ammo dump where chemical weapons were being produced. And frankly, that seems to me a more credible story than the one that the likes of Kenneth Roth are pushing. Buy the bond, UST bond, this is Aurelia, confident on the charts. OECD inflation is at a 5-year high. Currency markets, euro dollar 106.75, dollar index 100.53, Japanese yen 110.60, Swiss franc 10023, the pound 124.40, the Australian dollar 0.7577, India rupee 65.025, South Korean won 1124.92, the Rial 309.72, Egyptian pound 17.9984, and the Rand is around the 13.55 level. Already again, look at her chart for dollar yen. She's looking for 108. I think she's right. Dollar index, look at this. I think 99.50 remains key, and obviously we've got a big data point this Friday, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. Tesla shares break $300 for the first time ever. And it's really an incredible story, especially when you consider someone like Nissan produces more electric cars than Tesla, and their valuation is considerably lower. Gold, let's take a look at what's happening with that. 1256.69, that's caught a bid lately. Crude oil has had a strong rebound now. US crude oil is at $51.70. The Pink Star Diamond was sold. It's a 59.6 carat pink diamond. It was sold for $71 million, setting the world record for the top auction price for any gem. The stone has an unusual distinction. It has attracted even higher bids in the past. The jeweler made the $553 million Hong Kong dollar bid for the Pink Star, ending a 5-minute contest. Fetched $58 million in May at Christie's. That was the Oppenheimer blue. Looks like India's Sensex might just break above the 30,000 level for the first time ever, and I think it probably did. Let's move to Africa. Congo's Kabila and the dictator's dilemma. If Mr. Kabila does not go wittingly, he makes his departure increasingly likely to be accompanied by armed violence. Congo's president finds himself in a dictator's dilemma. If he gives up control of the military and remains in the Congo, he and his immense wealth become targets for his enemies. Mr. Kabila would most likely need guarantees of protection or have to live in exile. The longer he defies the constitution, however, the harder it will become to cajole him to hold elections and possibly leave. Congo's streets deserted as millions heed dead cities. Millions of people in the DRC's main cities heeded an opposition call to stay at home on Monday in protest at the collapse of talks to end the country's escalating political crises, leaving streets largely deserted. It's becoming increasingly clear that he wants to stay in power as long as he can. He's probably hoping the opposition campaign will run out of steam. Put up a photograph that Mr. Bazabose posted of Kinshasa by night, and that goes to my point, that's the revolutionary contingent attains its ideal form not in the place of production, but in the street. President Kabila, this was in 2016, outwitted Moïse Katumbi by removing him from the street in the Congo entirely. And I said it might well prove a cleverly administered technical knockout. The man who would be king of the Congo, this is Tshisekedi's son, is facing strong headwinds as he attempts to live up to his illustrious name. But if and when the elections happen, whether in 2017 or years from now, he will be forced to reveal the extent of his ambitions. If he does covet the presidency, he will first need to sever his alliance with Katumbi and G7, which will be clearly wary of empowering him. Kabila is surely rooting for such a rupture, for Tshisekedi and Katumbi to become their own worst enemies. Zuma's early exit, not a sure thing. This is an article on Bloomberg. He might be at his weakest point. Since becoming president of South Africa in 2009, sweeping cabinet changes, including the firing of Finance Minister Gordhan, have precipitated a political crisis to go along with his own scandal-checkered history and the nation's economic struggles. S&P Global Ratings cut the nation's credit rating to junk for the first time in 17 years. How could he be removed? While there are clear mechanisms to remove Zuma, it's no easy task. The NEC, a group of about 100 party leaders, could decide by majority vote to call on Zuma to resign as president. This isn't unprecedented. The committee forced out then President Thabo Mbeki in 2008. Parliament could also act. The Speaker, Belaka Mbete, is considering a request from the two biggest opposition parties, the DA and the EFF, to call lawmakers back from their Easter recess for a no-confidence vote. Zuma has survived 4 previous such votes. If such a motion won support from all opposition members of the 400-seat National Assembly, it would still need 50 of the ANC's 249 members to win a majority. Zuma's opponents are working to persuade disgruntled ANC members, such as those purged in the cabinet reshuffle, to turn against him. He will be very difficult to remove. South African all shares up 3.96% this year. Dollar versus rand, take a look at this chart. I think we've had a pause for breath and we'll sell off again. El-Sisi pointedly noted that he had not been welcomed to the White House during Barack Obama's presidency. Egyptian pound is back below 18. Nigerian all shares minus 5.99% this year. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index is plus 10.97% this year. Kenya's $4 billion railway gains traction from Chinese policy ambitions. A few miles outside the town of Makindu on the Nairobi-Mombasa road sits a heavily guarded compound. Only the sign outside in red Chinese lettering indicates that this is the project site for Section 9 of the new $4 billion Chinese-built railway that will run 300 miles between the Kenyan capital and the Indian Ocean port. The railway is the centerpiece of an infrastructure splurge by President Kenyatta, who faces re-election this year, and whose Kenyan government has invested heavily in roads, pipelines, oil development, and geothermal power. It is also one of China's most important investments in East Africa and follows the opening in January of a $4.2 billion line from Djibouti to Addis Ababa. Contrary to some critics who have voiced concerns at China's growing presence in Africa, residents of Makindu are upbeat on the biggest infrastructure project in Kenya since independence 54 years ago. It's very smart, says Elizabeth Ngima, housewife referring to the elevated line and towering new station just outside town. It's very quick, very quiet, and when you're on it, you feel like you're in heaven, she adds, conceding that she has not yet ridden on the new train, which will be commissioned in June. Other residents of Makindu, including the barber, counter a common complaint in Africa that Chinese do not hire local people, saying the construction company employs Kenyan laborers, guards, and chefs. In the past 10 years, China has gone from having little presence in Kenya to becoming one of its most important trading and investment partners. Thanks to shipments eroding stock and other equipment, Kenya's imports from China ballooned to nearly $5 billion in 2016, a threefold increase from 2010, against $780 million from the US. Kenya is on the outer reaches of China's One Belt, One Road project, through which Beijing intends to invest almost $1 trillion in infrastructure on the old Silk Road and as far as East Africa's east coast, in a push to improve trade links with political influence and deploy the excess capacity of its steel and construction industries. The Nairobi-Mombasa Railway is the first leg of a line intended to go all the way to Kampala and eventually to Rwanda, knitting together swathes of the East African community's emerging trade bloc. It will replace the near-defunct British railway, dubbed the Lunatic Line, because of the cost in lives and money that it took to build, late 19th century. The entire Africa continent can be connected by Chinese rail, so this Kenya rail is a kind of prototype for all future projects at Wangdehua, Professor at Shanghai Institute for International Studies. It's a big strategic move for our country. China is providing Kenya with financing for roughly 90% of the Nairobi-Mombasa project. The railway is being built by a state-owned China Road and Bridge Corporation, which will operate it for the first 5 years and financed by China's Exim Bank. Of the $3.6 billion in financing, $2 billion is a 15-year loan at LIBOR plus 360. The remaining $1.6 billion is on concessional terms at 2% interest, repayable over 20 years. Loans have pushed Kenya's debt above 50% of output, have raised concern that Mr. Kenyatta's government might be building a white elephant. Critics say the railway will cost significantly more per mile than equivalent projects in Ethiopia and Morocco, raising suspicion that much has been creamed off by unscrupulous politicians. Kwame Awino complains over the lack of transparency of a project he says was negotiated in secret. It's clear that Kenya got the short end of the stick. This is a very expensive piece of infrastructure whose specifications have been overstated. He says the economic benefits for Kenya are exaggerated. China has not been exactly open about the railway. Makindu, the FT, was politely referred to the Chinese embassy in Nairobi, which refused a request for an interview. Still, China Road and Bridge has sought to head off criticisms by employing nearly 20,000 local workers, also made concessions to environmentalists by building underpasses for wildlife to cross the section of railway that passes through the Tsavo National Park. I reckon that the economic benefits could be higher than skeptics think if the rail makes Kenya a more efficient transport conduit for East African trade. China, not always known for its soft power skills, may even be learning a few tricks, for example by training Kenyan women to be train drivers. Whatever the criticisms about China's investment drive in other parts of Africa, they're not evident on the streets of Nairobi. So that's an interesting point. This is the old railway, Mombasa-Nairobi Railway. The photo was taken just outside the entrance to Tsavo East. Kenya Railways Corporation terminates RVR's 25-year contract to run the Kenya-Uganda Railway, cites failure by RVR to meet set operating targets. Nairobi all shares down 1.61% this year. Nairobi NSE 20s down 2.81% this year. SMS volumes hit an all-time high of 15.8 billion sent in the quarter ended December. This is surely correlated to betting. A 29.1% increase in the number of messages from 12.2 billion in the previous 3 months. According to the report, the number of SMSs sent from Safaricom's network increased by a sizable margin to a record 15 billion messages, up from 11.5 billion messages posted during the previous quarter. Distel yesterday announced it has acquired Centum's entire 26.43% stake in Qual, bringing it into a majority position. Spirits has been the fastest growing segment of Kenya's alcohol industry, and growth is anticipated to remain robust. And let me take it there. I will be away, by the way, for next week for a few days, but I'll still be updating Rich Reynolds. And I thank you for stopping by. I'm always grateful.